To repay my kindness, the Marquis ordered his eldest legitimate son to take me as his wife. My husband never uttered a word of complaint, and treated me gently all the while. Yet a year later, the Marquis passed away, and my husband inherited his title. Everything changed overnight. He brought his childhood sweetheart into the mansion, demoting me from wife to concubine. The maids and matrons in the household shifted their allegiance with the wind, bullying and insulting me, while he turned a blind eye. If you hadn't clung to this debt of gratitude to force a marriage, I would have wed Qingqing long ago. Everything you endure now is nothing but karmic retribution. When I opened my eyes again, I was transported back to the day the Marquis offered me a marriage from his sons. Staring at the Marquis, who had just turned 40, I stroked my chin and spoke. You still carry quite a striking charm for your age. If you truly wish to repay me, why not become my groom by way of extra-local marriage? I had been reborn on the very day the Marquis sought to repay my rescue. While he sent servants to summon his 3 sons, he chatted with me. Among my 3 boys, Qingqing stands head and shoulders above the rest, in both looks and erudition. Marry him, and you shall live a life of ease and plenty. Naturally, the choice is entirely yours. You may pick whichever suits your fancy shortly. He will be not only your husband, but also the heir apparent of the Marquis manor. No sooner had he finished speaking than the 3 young masters of the manor arrived one after another. The Marquis spoke truth. Qingqing was undeniably the most outstanding of his 3 sons. He stood tall and straight as a pine, his features flawless and handsome, his brows and eyes mild as still water, his black hair tied high in a sleek topknot, a perfect image of a gentle, refined gentleman, flanked by his 2 younger brothers. His grace and bearing shone all the brighter. Ethereal and unmatched, the Marquis did not state his intentions outright, merely telling them I was his savior. The 3 bowed to me in unison to express their thanks. Once they had left, the Marquis asked which one I desired, glancing at their retreating backs. I thought back to my tragic fate in my past life. I shook my head slowly. I only pulled you out of the icy river, sold all my family's possessions, slaughtered every chicken we owned to simmer nourishing broth, and tended to you day and night for 3 months while you lay unconscious. It was but a small favor. You need not hold it so dear. Besides, forcing your sons to wed me will only leave them resenting the match. The Marquis waved a hand dismissively. Name whoever you wish to marry. Do not hesitate for a moment. Miss Gu saved my life. My sons are filial. They will never refuse. I bowed my head to ponder. In my past life, I had chosen Qingqing without a second thought. This lifetime, I wanted none of them. If the Marquis truly intends to repay me, simply grant me a sum of gold and silver to secure my livelihood. Then I shall live comfortably enough on my own. Wealth you shall have in abundance. Of course. But you are an orphan girl, left with only money. You will surely draw the covetous eyes of ill-intentioned men. If none of my sons appeal to you, there are collateral branches of the Shen clan. Rest assured. Every man of the Shen household has been tutored by esteemed scholars. Disciplined and virtuous none would dare bully you. Whomever you choose, you shall live safe and untroubled. I paused, realizing his words held great sense. As I hesitated, my gaze fell upon the Marquis himself. Newly 40 years old, a sudden thought bloomed in my mind. May I choose anyone at all? Anyone you please. You still have a handsome, fetching air about you. Then I choose you. The Marquis stared at me in utter shock, his face flaming crimson. He stammered, pointing shakily at his own chest. Madame. Naturally. I stroked my chin. You said I could pick anyone. Is it that you are not a man of the Shen household? Or do you mean to renege on repaying your debt? Not at all. I fully intend to repay your kindness. The Marquis stumbled over his words in panic. But I am a widower, already 40, and often called away to lead troops into battle. Marrying me would be a terrible disadvantage for you. I nodded thoughtfully. Now that you put it that way, I do lose out quite a bit. Here is a compromise. If you mean to repay me sincerely, become my extra-local husband instead. The Marquis spat out the tea he had just sipped in shock. You extra-local marriage. To you. Precisely. If I wed you, I suffer the loss. If you marry into my household, I lose far less. Or are you unwilling? If so, forget it. If you lack even this much sincerity, do not speak of repaying favors. After all, I sold my home, killed all my chickens to make restorative stew, and watched over you without sleep for 3 months. I never once expected repayment. If you refuse, I shall press the matter no further. With that, I turned to leave. Wait, the Marquis snatched the sleeve of my robe, his cheeks bright as sunset clouds. I never said I refuse. This came entirely out of the blue. Give me a moment to think it over. His cheeks still flushed bright red. There was an odd, bashful softness to his tone. I patted the back of his hand, clearing my slightly tight throat. Do not tarry. Then, truth be told, men as upright and chaste as he, with a short lifespan at that, were few and far between. The Marquis let out a quiet his cheeks still stained pink as he departed. Before leaving, he bade the steward arrange a quiet courtyard for my lodging. No sooner had I reached the courtyard the steward assigned me than I ran into Qingqing, or rather had been lying in wait for me. Qingqing sent the steward away. His brows knotted tight with displeasure. I know you seek to marry me, yet my heart belongs solely to Qingqing. I do not wish to distress father, nor to betray Qingqing. Therefore, I ask that you go to father voluntarily and offer to become my concubine. Obey. And I swear I shall not mistreat you. How brazen could one be? He craved his noble title, clung to his childhood sweetheart, and expected me to bow down as his concubine. What lofty fantasies! I rolled my eyes hard, grabbed a bamboo broom leaning against the wall, and swept him toward the courtyard gate. I have never once spoken of marrying you. Master Shin, set your heart at rest. Qingqing let out a scoff. In our past life you would have begged for the match. You only pretend to be stubborn now. He proceeded to extol his virtues and those of his 2 brothers, expounding on how he outshone them in scholarship, looks, wit, and reputation, undeniably the best possible match. I said nothing, never pausing my sweeping. He was not exaggerating. He truly was the most outstanding of the 3 Shin sons. That was why I had fallen for him at first sight in my past life. But my past suffering had taught me never to judge a man by first impressions alone. Men like Qingqing, greedy to have everything yet lacking in vigor, made terrible spouses. After all, a discontented husband could take concubines, chambermaids, mistresses, or visit pleasure houses at will. A wife, however, was trapped for life with a man who could not perform his marital duties. Utter misery. Seeing me sigh repeatedly, Qingqing lifted an eyebrow. Fear not. As long as you are docile and never provoke Qingqing, I shall treat you decently. My grip on the broom tightened, and I swept harder than before. I had coddled his ego far too long. How dare he presume I would submit to him? Early the next morning, servants arrived bearing crate upon crate of gifts from the Marquis. Antique paintings, gold and silver jewels, fine silks and satins, riches beyond count. A sinking feeling settled in my chest. Oh no! Had the Marquis rejected my proposal and resorted to buying me off with wealth instead? Barely had the thought crossed my mind when the Marquis appeared himself. His lips parted to speak, but I cut him off. You need not explain. I shall pack these gifts and take my leave tonight. Who said you are to leave? The Marquis pressed his lips together. Are you casting me aside? Joy flared in my eyes. You agree to marry into my household? The Marquis gave a faint nod. Yet I am often away campaigning, plagued by a lingering old illness. I fear I may never sire an heir for you. Pa. That is trivial. I clapped him on the shoulder. I shall hold no grievance against you. Besides, I glanced pointedly at his lower abdomen. This ailment can be healed, provided you cooperate. Do not forget I am a trained medical woman. The Marquis trembled, his earlobes burning scarlet. What if treatment fails? I am far older than you, certain to pass long before you. Your later years would be bleak without a child to rely on. His reasoning held merit. Then you must prepare a generous extra-local dowry for me. and petition the throne to grant me a lady's official title. Then I shall want for nothing." The Marquis readily consented. He swore that if he married into my household, all matters would bend to my will. He even added that if he proved unable to father children, he would select sturdy young men from his army ranks to serve as my consorts. My heart swelled with gratitude. What a devoted spouse to have. I urged him to hasten preparations for the wedding feast. The Marquis's face flushed hot. "Are you in such a rush?" "Naturally. After all, he would be dead within a year." Before long, the steward oversaw all preparations, sourcing wine and ingredients for the feast, ordering red silk and wedding candles, and cross-checking guest lists with the Marquis. On the day I went to have my wedding robes tailored, Qingqing stormed into my courtyard, his face dark with rage. "Gu Wan, I thought you a sensible woman, yet you play this underhanded game, forcing father into a corner to make him compel our marriage." I was busy sorting embroidery patterns for the robes and paid him no heed. Flicking a signal to my maid, she hurried off to fetch the Marquis at once. But Qingqing would not relent. He swiped stacks of fabric samples off the table, roaring, "I told you Qingqing is the one I mean to wed. You will be nothing but my concubine. Know your place." With the fabrics scattered across the stone floor, I lost all desire to pick patterns. Just then, the Marquis hurried into the yard. Qingqing's face paled, grinding his teeth. "You dare run crying to father?" I shot him a withering glance, then turned to the Marquis and pointed at Qingqing. "He says he intends to marry Lu Qingqing." The Marquis narrowed his eyes. "Is that so?" Sweat beaded on Qingqing's forehead as he bowed respectfully. "I harbor no improper wishes. I shall abide wholly by father's arrangements." What a coward only dared throw his weight around in front of me. I spoke plainly. He meant every word he said. I heard it clear as day with both ears. Qingqing grew frantic. "Do not spout lies. Why not simply grant his wish?" I cut in. "Let Lu Qingqing and I enter the household on the very same wedding day." "How does that sound?" "Very well." The Marquis agreed without hesitation. Shock and confusion flooded Qingqing's face in an instant. Then his gaze softened with faint satisfaction and delight. No sooner had the Marquis stepped out than Qingqing pulled me into his arms. I shoved him hard, sending him stumbling several paces back. Yet he did not grow angry. He merely said, "I know resentment gnaws at your heart. I swear I will treat you well from this day forth." I let out a cold huff. His own father was soon to marry into my household. How dare he mistreat me even if he wanted to? In less than 10 days, the steward brought over the extra-local dowry inventory for me to review. The Marquis bids you speak up if you wish for anything extra to be added. I unrolled the lengthy scroll. It stretched clear across the stone floor. 1,000 mu of fertile farmland, 800 mu of water paddies on the outskirts of town, 12 shop fronts lining the main street, 2 country manors on the city's edge, all deeded solely to my name. That was only the start. Phoenix coronets studded with eastern pearls and kingfisher inlay, jade hairpins and pendants, bolts of brocade and shoe silk, antique porcelain from former dynasties, treasures and silks piled endlessly, dazzling my eyes. I was admiring the list when Qingqing arrived once more. He snatched the scroll out of my hand at once. One glance, and he looked up, stunned out of his wits. Father would part with such vast wealth. He pointed to lines on the inventory and instructed the steward. Father dotes on me, yet I must not take advantage of his generosity. This golden Nanmu antique shelf and the 9-dragon sword with sharkskin scabbard are father's most cherished treasures. Remove them from the list. Leave them with him. The steward took the scroll awkwardly, stammering for a long moment before replying. This is not betrothal silver for your wedding, young master. This is the dowry for the Marquis's extra-local marriage. What? Father is to marry into another's household. A Marquis, bowing as a groom for some lady. Before the steward could answer, Qingqing's eyes widened with sudden realization. I see now. Once the eldest princess pressured father to cast aside mother and wed her, and father refused fiercely. Mother has long since passed, and the princess's husband died last year. They mean to rekindle their old affair. He muttered to himself, confused. Yet this cannot be right. In our past life, father never married into the princess manor. Father shall never wed the princess. I preened, tapping my own chest proudly. He is marrying into my household. Qingqing laughed loud, as if I had told the most ridiculous joke imaginable, jabbing a finger at me. You, a woman fit only to be my lowly concubine, daring to covet my own father. I swatted his hand away. What of it? You refused to marry me, yet begrudge your father marrying into my home. When the steward did not contradict a word, Qingqing's brain finally caught up to the truth. Gu Wan, you cling to this debt of gratitude, unable to become my primary wife. So you stoop to this farce, seducing my father instead. I corrected him sharply. He is marrying into my family, not me marrying his. Ignoring my correction, he pressed on. I know you are bitter over my betrothal to Qingqing. Yet this reckless stunt ruins father's good name. No matter how you beg afterward, I shall never take you as my concubine. Can this man truly not understand plain speech? I planted my hands on my hips, furious. Who in their right mind would want to be your concubine? The Marquis and I share sincere affection. What right have you, a toad, to croak and hop about interfering? Qingqing remained unconvinced, set aside his title for a moment. He is middle-aged, faded in looks, father to 3 grown sons. What could you possibly see in him? First of all, his title cannot simply be set aside. Secondly, catching a flash of dark crow-blue robe hem by the doorway out of the corner of my eye, I raised my voice sharply. The Marquis has only just reached 40. How can anyone call him old? He has sharp sword brows and star-bright eyes. His figure straight as a rugged pine. Years patrolling the border have not worn down his looks one bit. Instead, they forged an imposing, steady aura about him. Qingqing, you slander the Marquis only out of jealousy that he is marrying into my household. I sized him up and down, my gaze lingering pointedly on one spot before I let out a cold snort. A man like you, I would not even take you as my personal manservant. I meant no such thing. I only. Enough. The Marquis strode swiftly to my side, his eyes dark and heavy. Is this how you speak of your father? He huffed coldly afterward. I have spent half my life at war, bathing my blade in enemy blood, earning a hereditary Marquis title through countless feats of arms. Without the shelter of my hard-won merits, where would your present honor and peace come from? Qingqing's face alternated between pale and flushed, all his arrogance vanishing in an instant. He dropped to his knees and kowtowed repeatedly. Father, calm your anger. I have revered you since childhood. I spoke out of reckless folly just now. Please grant me forgiveness. He soon fabricated an excuse to flee the scene. The Marquis shot me a complicated glance, then turned and left as well. I was utterly captivated by the staggering wealth listed on his extra-local dowry scroll. The midday heat swelled as sunlight dappled the ground through treetop leaves. Leaning in the pavilion to catch a breeze, a sweet tart fragrance drifted to my nose. Glancing down, I saw a delicate plate of chilled sour plum drink. When I looked up at who had brought it, I gaped in shock. Where's your beard gone? Caught staring, the Marquis grew unaccountably flustered, crimson creeping up the tips of his ears, his voice stuttering slightly. How do I look like this? How to put it? Stunning beyond words. Shorn of his beard, he looked a good 10 years younger. His chiseled features were fully laid bare, his face like a landscape scroll stripped of dull varnish, all the handsome features hidden beneath whiskers now laid plain. Elegant, dazzling, utterly captivating. No wonder the eldest princess once forced him to cast aside his wife and wed her. Handsome and steadfastly loyal. Truly a perfect match. On our wedding day, guests thronged the manor, seeing the Marquis truly marrying into the household of a powerless lowly medical girl. Clusters of visitors huddled together, whispering behind their sleeves, their stares full of gossip and bewilderment. A handful of noble ladies shot me looks ranging from envy to admiration. Once the marriage rites concluded, the Marquis and I sat in the master seats to receive bows from Qingqing and Qingqing. When serving tea, Qingqing held out the cup to the Marquis, barely containing her delight. Father, please take your tea. The The Marquis did not reach for it. Qingqing burned with frustration yet dared not voice his rage. Only when the steward reminded them. The Marquis has finished the wedding rites with Miss Gu. From now on, Miss Gu is head of this household. Qingqing reluctantly extended the teacup to me, her tone sullen. Drink. The Marquis knitted his brows, rose to his feet, and parted his lips to reprimand Heronly for me to hold him back. Let it be. No need to quarrel with the younger generation. Truth be told, I could never bring myself to call a woman only a few months younger than me mother either. Qingqing, by contrast, bent with perfect pliability, he silently offered me the teacup. Mother, please drink your tea, good boy. I smiled warmly and pressed 2 heavy money pouches into their hands. They were stuffed full of copper coins. Not filling them with stones was the greatest mercy I could offer. Twilight fell, and lanterns along the roof eaves lit one after another. The Marquis sent everyone away. Looking nervous and uneasy, he drained a goblet of wine in one gulp, his cheeks flushing bright red. It has been far too long since I shared a bed with a woman. I fear I may not be able to. But rest assured, I took an aphrodisiac blended by a divine healer just now. I will satisfy you completely. He leaned in then, nipping gently at my earlobe. May I? Almost without thinking, I lifted a hand to caress his flushed, handsome face, sliding my fingers down his bobbing Adam's apple, over his firm broad chest, and onto his flat, taut abdomen. My forefinger hooked his sash and tugged it loose. He crumpled forward like a collapsing wooden tower, pinning me beneath him. Scalding kisses rained down, spreading across every inch of my skin. As I soared to dizzying heights, I tangled my fists tight in his waterfall-long hair, unable to hold back soft whimpers. The man atop me took my sounds as encouragement, thrusting harder and harder. He only ceased when pale dawnlight streaked the sky, curling me tight in his arms and falling into deep slumber. Through my drowsy haze, I thought to myself, that healer truly deserves his fame. This medicine is astoundingly potent. I slept straight until noon the next day. When I woke, the space beside me was empty. Qingqing waited outside the door, eyes glistening with unshed tears. Qingqing could not bear to see her cry, glaring daggers at me. Gu Wan, do not push your luck too far. Qingqing has been waiting to pay her respects since before dawn. Yet you put on airs and torment the new bride. I rubbed my bleary eyes and slapped Qingqing hard across the cheek. No manners. Call me mother. A thought flickered in my mind. As expected, Qingqing was useless in bed. I had half a mind to follow his accusation and torment Qingqing. Yet I was far too worn out to bother with such petty schemes. I told them they need not come for daily greetings anymore and sent them off. After all, the evils they committed in my past life bore no weight on this present timeline. Life with my Marquis extra-local husband was infinitely better than my past marriage. He was utterly faithful. No concubines, no bed servants, no secret mistresses. No women vied for his favor or schemed against me. My days were peaceful and uncomplicated. Unlike before, shortly after Qingqing married me, he got drunk and took several concubines, housing Qingqing as his secret mistress on a country estate. Those concubines and Qingqing wore honeyed smiles while harboring poisoned hearts. Had I not stayed sharp-witted, they would have torn me limb from limb. Shortly after the Marquis died in my past life, Qingqing faked a pregnancy to demand formal status. I felt her pulse and spotted the lie at once, telling Qingqing the truth. But Qingqing bribed other physicians to claim I had murdered her unborn child. Enraged, Qingqing demoted me from wife to concubine, locking me in the firewood shed with no food or water until I confessed to my alleged crime. I suspected that aphrodisiac carried addictive properties. Why else would I crave him so fiercely, pestering him non-stop in his study each day? The Marquis' old wet nurse dropped subtle hints to me multiple times. Her meaning was plain. The Marquis had always kept his desires in check. Yet he yearned desperately to father a child for me. Hence he always yielded readily to my advances. Beneath her words lingered faint reproach, urging me to show restraint. Shortly after her warning, I came down with a fierce cold, weak and lethargic. able to do nothing but lie in bed and take medicine for days on end. One night, bored out of my wits, I propped myself up by the bed. Staring blankly, I heard the door creak open. Then footsteps retreating again, assuming it was a maid switching shifts. I paid it no mind, but the night was deathly quiet, and I faintly heard fabric hit the floor. I looked up in surprise, lit by candlelight, and my eyes nearly popped out. Good heavens! The Marquis knelt atop the bed, completely bare. His chest stood full and defined, rimmed faintly red. The corners of his eyes were flushed pink. He looked utterly tempting. What on earth was he doing? Trying to test my self-control. I was plotting how to touch him without seeming too forward when he seized my hand and pressed it to his chest, rubbing gently. You haven't sought me for days. Do you grow tired of me? I lost all self-restraint, and we spent the entire night tangled together. The consequence: I was bedridden for another full week. Once fully recovered, the Marquis wished to hand over household management to me. I refused outright. For one thing, I possessed endless wealth from his local dowry. For another, ever since the Empress ascended the throne, she had opened recruitment for female court physicians. Though many ministers opposed it, the Empress brokered a small number of openings. To win support from powerful clans, selection operated on a dual system: noble recommendation plus imperial examinations. In my past life, I begged Qingqing to put my name forward, only to meet his scornful sneer. Our Marquis Manor holds vast lands and fortunately no need for a woman to parade herself outside the home. This lifetime, the Marquis agreed without hesitation. With eligibility secured, I studied relentlessly, poring over texts, memorizing herbal formulas, and practicing prescriptions deep into the night, tuning out all of the Marquis's teasing attempts to distract me. Men only slow my study progress. Sometimes his enticements proved too strong to resist. After we lay together, I would pinch the soft flesh at his waist, chiding him for delaying my lessons. The Marquis never grew cross, only looked faintly wronged. He said he had spent decades behaving as a proper gentleman, rigidly restraining his desires, yet my constant pursuit of him had left him insatiable. He swore he would never bar my studies, only asking I come to him to release stress when overwhelmed. I already possessed foundational medical knowledge, and the Marquis secured the Imperial Hospital's chief physician to tutor me personally. Complex, hard-to-diagnose illnesses I once struggled with soon grew clear to me. I ranked top of the exam roster. When the Empress learned I was the woman the Marquis had married into service to, she looked upon me with great favor. Even the eldest princess, wielding iron resolve, could never win him over, yet you have him wrapped firmly around your finger. Minister Gu, you carry much of my own spirit. Thanks to the Empress's approval, I was assigned to attend her in the palace. Taking her pulse one day, I detected an irregular, stuttering beat, stagnation and blockage in her heart vessels. Consulting the chief physician, I learned she suffered recurring bouts of angina and back pain. Her symptoms matched the ancient medical definition of true heart pain. I recalled that in my past life, the Empress had died suddenly not long after taking the throne. Rumors spread then that she had been murdered by traitors. Now I realized she had likely succumbed to untreated true heart pain. Under the chief physician's guidance, I drafted a conditioning herbal decoction and urged the Empress not to overtax herself, to cherish her health. But the Empress only sighed. Minister Gu, I see your care, yet there is so much I must accomplish. Beside these duties, my own life weighs little. After ascending, the Empress overhauled outdated systems, governing diligently and caring for her people. Her reforms cut into aristocrats' profits, and upon her death, slander flooded the realm, accusing her of murdering her brothers and scheming ruthlessly to seize the throne. Still, her policies brought tangible prosperity to common folk. Though her reign was brief, she carved an indelible, bold mark into history's pages. With no way to sway her, I brought her herbal broth and silver acupuncture needles. Standing guard beside her throne, I kept a special watch on the anniversary date of her past life death, swapping shifts to remain by her side. Sure enough, despite the conditioning medicine, Years of overwork had left her body frail beyond repair. When a violent attack of true heart pain struck, I rushed forward to steady her frame, pried open her jaws, dissolved Styrax heart relief pills in warm water, and poured the liquid slowly down her throat. Next, I inserted silver needles into Tanzhong, Naiguan, and other key acupoints to unblock her meridian vessels. I wrapped coarse salt, heated in advance, into cloth pouches, pressing the warm packs to her Tanzhong chest point and shoulder blades to ease her crippling agony. Sweat soaked my robes as I waited anxiously until at last, the Empress's eyes fluttered open slowly, for saving her life. I was promoted to vice director of the Imperial Hospital and awarded 1,000 taels of gold. Staring at the chest brimming with gleaming gold, I unexpectedly gagged. Something was deeply off. Far too off. I was a woman who adored wealth. Why the sudden false disdain for gold? I felt my own pulse and discovered I carried a child. The Marquis was overjoyed. He rushed to the palace to petition an imperial edict, requesting my unborn babe be named hereditary heir of the Marquis title. Qingqing heard of this and hurried to dissuade him, his face ashen. His arguments logically sound. He pointed out we did not yet know if the child was boy or girl. Pressing for a title too soon would displease the throne. The Marquis paid no heed. 4-1. He had married into my household entirely. His title naturally transferred to me alongside him. 4 another. The reigning sovereign was a woman herself. No one questioned her right to rule. The Marquis set off full of high spirits, only to trudge home dejected. The Empress told him childbirth was hard on a woman's body, and he already had 3 elder sons. Naming my infant heir would only put the baby in grave danger from jealous schemers, aside from armfuls of nourishing tonics. She granted no formal title. I thought the matter settled until I discovered the imperial tonics had been laced with a sterilization poison. The toxin was extremely potent and nearly undetectable by taste. A pregnant woman who drank it would miscarry instantly. Any man or woman who ingested it would be rendered barren for life. I spotted the poison because, in my past life, after Qingqing released me from the firewood shed, I had slipped this exact drug into his meals daily. I laid a simple trap to catch the serving maid who'd spiked the medicine, then followed the trail to the mastermind, Lu Qingqing, without revealing my knowledge. I passed all the tonics on to Qingqing. I told him the medicine tasted foul yet was immensely nourishing. If he drank it, perhaps the Marquis and I would soon hold a grandson to dote on. I sighed dramatically several times, claiming I cared nothing for the Marquis. Tightlight was only the Marquis's fear of no heir pushing him to beg the throne. I added that the Empress's refusal surely stemmed from her high regard for Qingqing himself. Qingqing's face lit up with delight, convinced my heart still belonged to him. He even mentioned how I'd cried reading on our wedding day. I racked my memory and recalled. When he'd served me tea that day, a flying insect had flown into my eye. I'd rubbed hard, bursting into tears from irritation. After that, every crate of imperial tonic went straight to Qingqing's study. 3 months later, Lu Qingqing announced her pregnancy, arriving hand in hand with Qingqing to share the blessing. The imperial nourishing tonics truly work wonders, Qingqing exclaimed. Lu Qingqing blinked, confused. What tonics? I sipped my tea calmly and told her the full truth. Lu Qingqing's face crumpled instantly, yet she dared not utter a word of protest. She herself had put the sterilization poison in my medicine. Worse still, if she confessed, Qingqing would learn the child in her womb was not his at all. In my past life, even after I poisoned Qingqing to render him sterile, Lu Qingqing bore him 3 sons and 2 daughters regardless. Qingqing had mocked me relentlessly then, calling me a barren hen. I had said nothing, knowing full well he was the one incapable of siring children. As my due date neared, an imperial decree arrived summoning the Marquis to lead troops to the border and quell a rebellion. This was the battle where he had died in my past life. Some genuine affection had grown between us through our nights together, and I begged him not to go, but he swore duty to country came before private love. He could not shirk his post for personal reasons. Recalling the past, I pressed him repeatedly to guard his life with extreme caution. The Marquis told me to wait for his triumphant return. With the Marquis gone, Lu Qingqing resumed her mischief. egging servants to slight me and skimp on my medicinal supplies. I sold off the troublesome maids and covered my needs with the wealth from his extra local dowry. I expected Qingqing to join her schemes too until one day he tripped and struck his head badly. When he woke, he lunged to strangle Lu Qingqing, shouting he would divorce her at once. Lu Qingqing's maid sprinted over in terror to beg me to settle the chaos. I waddled over slowly, heavy with child, to find Lu Qingqing collapsed on the stone floor wailing. Qingqing's eyes burned bloodshot. He brandished a sword at a young manservant, screaming that the boy was her lover. I narrowed my eyes. So Qingqing had also been reborn. Lu Qingqing scrambled forward on her knees, clutching my skirt hem. "Mother, save me!" The manservant cried out too. "Master, spare me!" Qingqing slowly turned his head, his gaze brimming with remorse and misplaced longing. He tossed the sword aside and pulled me tight into his arms. "Wan, I wronged you. Wait, why was I dragged into this mess?" Lu Qingqing was too busy fighting off divorce charges to plot against me anymore. I safely gave birth to a baby girl, whom I named Gu Tianxi, Heaven's Gift. Shortly after my daughter's birth, Qingqing resorted to threats and bribery. Yet Lu Qingqing refused to admit her infidelity. Their divorce turned into a formal separation instead. Free of Lu Qingqing, Qingqing developed what looked like an edible fixation, calling on me every few days without fail. I refused all his visits. Desperate, he climbed over my courtyard wall to block my path, demanding to know if I had also been reborn. He insisted I ought to love him with every fiber of my being. Yet now I treated him only with cold indifference. I did not deny my rebirth, only asked flatly, "You got exactly what you wanted, marriage to Lu Qingqing. Is it not everything you dreamed of?" "It is terrible," Qingqing replied without hesitation. "I was blind and foolish before. I will make amends to you." He told me how, in our past life, as I lay dying, I had lured him close and stabbed a silver hairpin deep into his neck, revealing I had fed him sterilization poison all those years. He had refused to believe me at first, though physicians saved his life. He was left paralyzed. At first Lu Qingqing tended to him dutifully, but once she realized he would never recover, she dropped the pretense entirely. She abused him, struck him, and openly coupled with her lover right before his eyes. They lay together shamelessly before me. And to add insult to injury, that man would fling his undergarments straight onto my face to humiliate me. Worst of all, every one of those children she bore calls that adulterer father. Once Qingqing could bear it no longer and glared furiously at the pair. Lu Qingqing struck him hard across the face. She sneered as she slapped him. "I began betting him the moment you married Gu Wan. I only agreed to be your secret mistress to grab hold of the Shen family fortune." In the end, Qingqing had choked to death on his own rage. I listened carefully, fighting to hold back a triumphant grin. Feigning patient sympathy, Qingqing took my hand and pressed it to his cheek. "I wronged you first in our past life, so I bear you no grudge for what you did. This lifetime, I will treat you properly." I could not help but remind him, "In this lifetime, by seniority, you must address me as mother." Qingqing brushed it off. "In our past timeline, father's life will not last long anyway. I will raise Tianxi as my own daughter. Trust me, Wan." I prayed fervently day and night for the Marquis' safe return. Yet battlefields hold no mercy for swords or spears. A desperate dispatch arrived bearing news. The Marquis had fallen in combat. Though he perished, his army defeated a far larger enemy force, routing their troops and securing decades of peace along the border. I was granted an official noble lady's patent of rank. Alongside it came an imperial edict decreeing my daughter Tianxi heir to the Marquis title. Qingqing was utterly stunned. He insisted there must be some terrible mistake, demanding I go to the palace to beg the throne to pass the Marquisate to him instead. Fearing he would harm Tianxi, I agreed to attend the palace audience, having narrowly escaped death. The empress had shed her former stubborn defiance. The chief eunuch coaxed her into resting and taking medicine each day, and her health had slightly improved though far from fully recovered. After feeling her pulse, I wrote out a prescription for her. Rehmannia glutinosa root is an ingredient here. The imperial hospital stock has it. Yet the roots are not aged enough. Once my shift ends, I must tend to my late husband's funeral arrangements. I would trouble Grand Eunuch to fetch the aged root for me. The day the Marquis's body was escorted home, an indescribable sorrow weighed heavy on my heart. But that vile Qingqing dared claim the Marquis had died at a most convenient time. I donned plain white coarse mourning robes and tied a mourning scarf around my head, handing him a simple fruit. Eat a little to steady your stomach. So many mourners will arrive today. You may get no chance for a proper meal. Qingqing did not reach for it. When I tilted my head in confusion, he let out a low laugh. Feed me. I knit my brows, swallowing my revulsion as I pushed the fruit into his mouth. Presently, guests began filing in. Second young Master Shin, third young Master Shin, and I stood beside the coffin receiving condolences. Amid the vast mourning hall, Qingqing was nowhere to be seen, just as Duke Gua and his wife arrived to pay their respects. Qingqing stumbled in. His robe hung loose over his shoulders, hair unbound, face flushed crimson, eyes glassy and unfocused. He spread his arms wide and lunged straight for Duchess Gua. She dodged out of the way. Yet he careened toward the other noble ladies next. Chaos erupted throughout the manor in an instant. Servants dared not injure him, only prodding him back with wooden staves. Far from cowed, Qingqing stripped off his outer robe and loosened his trousers right before everyone. Lewdly fondling himself, the noblewomen shrieked in terror. At that very moment, Grand Eunuch drew his sword and darted forward, slicing clean through Qingqing's flailing left arm with one strike. Qingqing screamed in agony several times before collapsing unconscious on the spot. I covered my nose with a silk handkerchief. Has eldest young master lost his wits? He has insulted distinguished guests and behaved so obscenely. I quickly interceded with a plea. He is still the Marquis's son after all. Merely expel him from the manor. I beg Grand Eunuch spare his life. The Grand Eunuch lowered his gaze, a faint smirk playing on his lips. We shall follow court physician Gu's wishes, as he handed over the aged Rehmannia root. His smile never faded. Datura and passion-inducing pills, no wonder his conduct turned wild and lecherous. Court physician Gu's methods are most masterful. I smiled back. The Empress's illness demands quiet recuperation. She ought not receive consorts in her chambers for some time. I would rely on Grand Eunuch to remind her gently on my behalf. Satisfied at last, the Grand Eunuch took his leave, moved by my bereavement and young daughter. The Empress bade me rest for a spell before resuming palace duties. I bowed deeply to give thanks for her imperial grace. Lu Qingqing knew nothing of Qingqing's expulsion. Fresh from childbirth, she stood wailing outside the manor gate clutching her swaddled infant, drawing crowds of onlookers to gawk. The entrance became a bustling spectacle in no time. Lu Qingqing shouted that Qingqing had seduced then abandoned her. Yet the babe was his blood, was bound to take responsibility. A concubine-born daughter whose family fortune had collapsed before she reached maturity. She had nothing to her name after separating from Qingqing. Naturally, she sought financial gain. Before the assembled crowd, I openly acknowledged the child as Qingqing's. Lu Qingqing's face lit with joy. She shot her secret lover a triumphant glance. Unfortunately, I paused. Qingqing was driven out of the manor recently for outrageous misbehavior. I scanned the crowd, then pointed to a ragged beggar lingering at the back. There he is. Go demand he provide for you. Lu Qingqing glanced at the beggar swarming with flies and mosquitoes, pinching her nose in disgust. Impossible. Filthy and stinking, how could this be the Marquis heir? First of all, the Marquis heir is my daughter Tianxi. Second, if you doubt me, feel free to verify his identity yourself. My unshakable certainty chipped away at her confidence. Trembling, she reached to brush the grime-caked hair from his face. When her eyes met Qingqing's tangled, hopeful stare, she retched violently, spitting a curse of ill omen. She fled, clutching her baby tight. Qingqing tried to stagger after her, only to be chased off by manor servants, while caring for Tianxi at home. I busied myself arranging marriages for second and third Shin. Second Shin married Princess Huayan as an Uxra local husband. Third Shin wed the Grand Tutor's granddaughter as an Uxra local husband. When word spread, Outsiders accused me of mistreating my stepsons, claiming I tormented them with this humiliating arrangement. Before I could defend myself, second and third Shen flared up in anger first, planting their hands on their hips. They snapped that those gossips knew nothing. They argued women were free to wed, why could men not marry into their wives' households? A vice minister namely sneered that they brought shame upon their clan's honor. Third Shen let out a cold laugh. If Vice Minister Li truly believes male extralocal marriage dishonors one's lineage, why send his own full younger brother into the palace as a palace servant? The two brothers were plain-featured yet neat and clean, passably literate though lacking scholarly talent, and held lofty ambitions for neither rank nor power. Second Shen loved wandering mountains and rivers. Third Shen delighted in researching fine cuisine. The moment I floated the idea of extralocal marriage, they agreed without hesitation. We'll marry in. They well knew how comfortable and privileged life as an extralocal son-in-law could be. When Tianxi turned 3, a deadly plague erupted in Qingqing County, given emergency imperial orders. I left Tianxi in the Empress's care and set off at the head of a medical party. Though I had never visited Qingqing in my past life, I had studied volumes on regional pestilences and knew precisely who would craft the curative formula in the end. Upon arriving, I immediately sent men to seek out Du Guyao to collaborate on developing a remedy. Working side by side, we cut a plague slated to last 3 years short to a mere 6 months before total eradication. Du Guyao declined the Empress's generous official offer, choosing to remain in Qingqing treating impoverished patients for free. Overjoyed, the Empress bestowed a commemorative stone plaque and piles of gold and silver as rewards, coinciding with the chief imperial physician's retirement. I was appointed head of the imperial hospital. On the journey back to the capital, we heard news of a murder in Huaihuai Lane. A one-armed beggar had broken into a home by night and hacked a family of 3 to death with a blade. Patrol constables had arrested him on the spot, and that day was scheduled for his public execution. My traveling companions railed at the beggar's cruelty and wished to stop and watch the beheading. I gave them leave to go, then galloped alone straight for the palace. Tianxi had grown noticeably taller. She trailed the imperial princess everywhere, chattering non-stop until the princess's head ached. The second prince tried to play with her, only to be brushed off with disdain. Hurt and confused, he asked how he might win her favor. Beneath a blossoming crabapple tree, Tianxi thought long, then blurted recklessly, "If you want to stay with me that badly, come marry into my household as an extralocal husband." I clapped a hand tight over her mouth, hissing quietly, "That is a princito you wish to lose your head." The second prince flushed bright red with rage and raced to the Empress's hall to complain. I sprinted after him yet failed to intercept him in time. Panting breathlessly, I heard a clear childish voice ring out ahead, "Mother Emperor, I wish to become Gu Tianxi's extralocal husband." The Empress laughed until she rocked forward and back, composing herself slowly after a long while. "That depends entirely on whether Tianxi will have you." Ever since the second prince declared before the throne his desire to marry into Tianxi's household, the capital's public opinion shifted completely. Once, court ministers spoke of how I had forced the entire Yong'an Marquis household into extralocal unions with bitter lament, decrying Lady Gu unraveling the proper moral order. Now that even a royal prince vied eagerly to wed into a woman's family, those rigid scholar officials fell silent. Privately, many began musing. Could their useless concubine-born sons also wed into powerful noble houses as extralocal husbands to live lives of ease? Time slipped by swiftly. By Tianxi's 16th Qingqing ceremony, she had bloomed into a graceful, striking young woman. She had inherited her father's elegant, peerless good looks, as well as my passion for wealth and innate medical gift. As for the second prince of years past, he had grown tall, broad-shouldered, and dashingly handsome, to legitimize his place entering my Gu household. He had endured harsh military training under the general of agile cavalry from age 12, earning a royal title purely through battlefield merit. One day after court, the head imperial physician pored over a newly drafted herbal formula when Prince Qi, clad in python-patterned royal robes, trotted over to me like a demure young bride, carefully cradling a sandalwood casket in his palms. "Mother-in-law Gu, this century-old ambergris was personally sourced by this prince from the southern borderlands. It calms the spirit better than any other. Does it meet your approval? I raised an eyebrow, took the casket, opened it and inhaled the scent upgrade quality. I nodded in satisfaction. Prince Qi is most thoughtful. My smile sparked a blaze of delight in his eyes. He rubbed his hands together anxiously. Then, when might we arrange the wedding between this prince and Tianxi? I have even brought the extra local dowry inventory drafted by the Imperial Household Department. It will far outstrip old Marquis's list from years past. Truly. Even royalty now competed fiercely to marry into a bride's family, racing to outdo one another with lavish dowries. I gave a light cough before I could reply. When Tianxi rounded the corridor carrying her medical chest, she shot Prince Qi a glance and lifted a brow. Li Hongyan. You are a full royal prince, yet haunt the imperial hospital daily. Strangers would think you suffer some fatal illness. I am indeed stricken with lovesickness, curable only by divine physician Gu, fearsome slaughterer of enemies on the battlefield. Prince Qi acted shamelessly love-struck before Tianxi. Grinning wide as a blooming flower, Tianxi rolled her eyes. Yet the faint pink flush high on her ear tips betrayed her true feelings. Wedding day brought unprecedented bustle to the capital. The Empress ordered the Imperial Household Department to oversee all arrangements. The extra-local dowry procession stretching to the Gu Manor formed a 10-li tray. L of red silk, magnificent beyond measure. Second and third Shen arrived with their princess and noble bride wives to offer congratulations, staring at the endless stream of red banners. The brothers munched melon seeds and sighed in reflection. Once we thought like eldest brother, real men stand tall, and marrying into a wife's household is a disgrace. Look at us now, feasting and living well in our wives' manners. If eldest brother had set aside his pride back then, he would never have ended up in such ruin. Could not agree more. Wherever we go now, everyone envies our easy, blessed lives. Listening to my two nominal stepsons murmur, I sat upright in the main hall, clasping Tianxi's hand in mine. For a fleeting moment, I pictured the Marquis again, beardless, cheeks flushed pink. All those years ago, he had departed too soon to see our daughter draped in red wedding silks. Yet the meritorious feats he'd fought and died for, along with his unreserved trust and wholehearted affection, had rippled into blessings that settled fully upon Tianxi. First bow to heaven and earth, second bow to elders and kin. I sat alone on the elders' dais to receive the newlyweds' obeisance, watching Prince Qi's foolish eagerness to throw his entire station and fortune into my household. I stroked my chin and smiled sincerely. In this lifetime, I had spurned the arrogant heir and taken his father for my extra-local husband instead. The path had been wildly unorthodox. Yet behold the boundless wealth filling this hall, my accomplished daughter. And this transformed era where women could forge illustrious careers of their own. This legacy of extra-local marriage was truly a wonder beyond words.